January, or December. It's the last day of the year. Tomorrow is January the 1st. I'm just a bit stunned by the story I got tonight. I've been stunned by that story since last night. It's like a really bad dream. I'm only covering one story. It's just, what the hell has this planet turned into? My goodness. And so, after the show last night, grueling show, just trying to get the show up and running, improved way to gauge radiation doses developed from Fukushima. This was linked to a study. And when you read this, you have no idea what the study is. I'm sure that's not an accident. And we got a poll to help articulate the story tonight, actually. Does Japan, academics, scientists, governments, journalists, professors, universities, institutions, nuclear regulatory agencies, only measuring external doses, that's even laughable to suggest they're actually measuring the external doses, for the victims in the nuclear wasteland prove, which is Japan actually, the entire country, but the real nasty places. I mean, this study, you got to see it to believe it, for victims in the nuclear wasteland proved Japan is not safe to visit. And that's such a sad statement, that a country is not safe to visit. Right? That's a crazy story, right? Like, the streets are fairly safe compared to a lot of countries. It's not that bad of a crime rate, all things considered. It's not safe to eat the food or buy any product or buy any furniture. It's not safe to drink the water. The water reclamation facilities are completely destroyed through radioactive fallout to the point where they can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration because it's so radioactive. So imagine how radioactive the pipes are. Imagine that's carrying the fresh water into people's homes, and they're constantly breathing it and consuming it and absorbing it. They're completely embedded in it. Everything in their life it's impossible to escape it. And it's not a physical atoms that you're breathing in, you're drinking, you're eating, you're washing your clothing, you're washing yourself, you're showering in, taking baths in it, hot tubs, swimming in this radioactive, anthropogenic, man-made elixir of misery. Here we describe nuclear power as a disease factory because it emits so much radiation every day from the fuel pools on sites. Long after they're closed, the fuel pools are full of reactor cores that are not very old. They were only used for 14 months or so before they start taking the fuel out and putting it in a pool because of the trillions of microscopic cracks. Each microscopic crack is hemorrhaging isotopes. These are kept in water. Water is boiled off all day long at enormous rates. And so there's a perpetual invisible poison lurking everywhere. But the story tonight or today, this is daytime for me. I'm 2 o'clock my time, I think. 3 o'clock my time. 7 minutes after 3. A nuclear wasteland. Visitors crowd a street lined with cherry blossoms in Tomoka, which is a nuclear wasteland, was abandoned for very many years. And they removed the restrictions last year on April 1st, 2023. The day an evacuation order was lifted for parts of the town, people went in to one of their favorite haunts before the nuclear meltdown to see the cherry trees start to blossom, right? It's a beautiful sight in a nuclear wasteland. And so as I'm reading the story, Japanese Atomic Energy Agency had developed a more accurate method to estimate the radiation exposures, doses among people who spend time around stricken. It's an interesting name, stricken. These are nuclear meltdowns. They're not stricken. That's the wrong name to use it, and it's completely dishonest to use that type of name. The building to your left is just one of the 4 reactors that had 2 fuel pools at the top of the building 150 feet above the stump to your left. The crazy people call themselves journalists behind me, very esteemed at that. And institutions are representing, and this ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega. CBS Seth Dorn is a senator's son in the United States. CBS is the biggest media, period, in North America. BBC is the biggest media in Europe, maybe worldwide in many ways. ABC Australia is the biggest media in Australia, and CNN are just degenerate monsters, right? That are in everybody's homes worldwide, many different languages. The Ted Turner military-industrial complex machine. I don't even know how to start it. You know, it's best just to skip this story and just go right to the study, because the study is... If someone come up and kicked me in the mouth when I sat down in a mall or on a bench or something like that, it wouldn't surprise me as much as this story does. Wouldn't shock me as much as this story does. Wouldn't hurt me as much as this story does. That's the crazy thing about this story today. And quite the appropriate story for the very last day of the year. And there was only one media covered the story, and they'd done an exceptional job of misrepresenting the academic study. That wasn't an accident. That was hand in hand, for sure. The Japanese Atomic Energy Agency has adapted the method based on the daily life patterns. So they have this new method of determining the doses of radiation people are exposed to. It's really special how someone can be so evil, and the amount of effort and energy they went to be this evil. They should get a Nobel Prize for it. Just reward them, because there should be a reward for something so evil that affects just over 100 billion people, 100 million people, of their own people. They stabbed in the back in the most unconscionable way. They threw everybody in the country under the bus, and worldwide on top of that. A complete and utter contempt for all species. It's enough to make you cry, it really is. Into program format, and is offering it for free on a municipal government website and elsewhere. They want the rest of the world to use their model in case of a nuclear accident, basically. Not just Japanese. That kind of I've never experienced that kind of contempt in Hollywood or anywhere else on this planet, in some science fiction book, or I've just never seen this kind of contempt before. I can't. It's hard to put it into words. Just kind of contempt. And criminality. They're only studying external doses and natural doses, conflating that in there to make it even worse. And we're almost to the study. It's going to start off with quite the bang on top of that. When the central government designated evacuation zones following the 2011 triple meltdown, it's actually 4 nuclear meltdowns. If you're not going to count the building to your left, then how can you not call that a nuclear meltdown? Because that's what they're doing by saying there's only 3. Reactor 1, 2, and 3. They're refusing to count reactor 4, same as journalists, I think you call these creatures. Surely you can come up with a better name. I've never seen anything like this. Is estimated radiation doses among the victims using a simple evaluation method that assumes they spend 8 hours outdoors and 16 hours indoors every day in a nuclear wasteland. And I'm moving them out of there. I need some water because if Calm Down Charlie's out there, give me a call. I want to talk to you. Give me a call. You can call me. I'll give you the number. Not that you need it. I got some questions for you. You can call in at 709-589-4406. We do a live show so the world that does find us knows that this subject is still important, still pertinent. And I'm Dana Durnford. So once again, 709-589, we're in Canada, 4406. If you want to put your input in on this, you're more than welcome. Here we go again. It always takes me a minute. There we go. I'm going to go for this screen. We're going to get to the study here quickly. When the central government designated evacuation zones following 2011 triple meltdown at the Fukushima plant, operated by the Japanese government, because TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company / TEPCO, was nationalized after Fukushima because they didn't have enough money to cover the expenses of and something we've never seen before is 4 nuclear meltdowns and 8 fuel pools, let alone 1 melting down. It's what I describe as a pulse event. It's massive pulse. It's like, think of you got you got 1,000 flowers in your garden that every year you put a lot of time and effort in, pride in, love into it. And in the middle of the summer you have a big frost comes in and kills everything. Well, scale that by 1 billion, and that's what the nuclear industry is doing to everybody on this planet, but particularly the Japanese population. And they do it every single day to them. So we're just going to jump down to the study. I can go through all this, but it doesn't do it justice. It doesn't tell the story. But I'll put it on the screen just in case you want to read it after. So in this story, it sounds like they're chasing around. They're doing a good job. That's what it sounds like. But Japan must be the only place in the world with several million atoms of radioactive isotopes per square meter, and comparable highly radioactive blue algae on school routes. This was Minnesota. So here's the study. The assessments of the individual external exposure dose is based on environmental radiation in areas affected by the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. So a query when I looked for internal doses in the study was none, 0, no matches for internal doses. There was, however, and this was external doses. You see the top of the page. There was 46 queries, 46 external doses, but there was no internal doses. And I was said to myself, This is going to be crazy. But another crazy facet to the study was how many times natural radiation was measured. And when you look at a lousy 2 paragraphs and you see natural radiation invoked this many times, you're dealing with something exceptional. It's exceptional that the world can allow something like this, that the academic journals would actually print something like this. A whole different level of scumbaggery. There is nothing else on the planet can touch the nuclear industry for evilness. There really isn't. All the militaries on the planet don't hold a single ounce against this industry. Model to predict the individual external doses because they poison everybody on the entire planet, and it's a terrible way to die from radiation sickness. A lot of them are the bone tumors, mutated stem cells and stuff like that, radioactive hormones being produced of all species. They're exterminating all species. But to come out with this study and only look at external and natural radiation, internal wasn't mentioned a single time. And this is a study they're going to be using to justify the doses to the victims in the nuclear wasteland and to the no-go zones, the reopening them. External exposure doses, external exposure doses, external exposure doses, external exposure doses. Quite the theme, wasn't it? External exposure, external exposure, external exposure. And as I started going down through this, and you can see the amount of times that they use, so when you're looking at the page, even if you're not really, if you're just speed reading, just glancing through, subconsciously you were absorbing these particular words, right? External, external, externals, externals. Right? That is not an accident that is done that way. And as I looked at all the external, just for the original, I just went down and looked at all the key highlighted words. I think it was 46, was it? Even in the towns of Akuma and Futaba, which are inconceivably radioactive nuclear wastelands, they barely gave, they barely acknowledged there was any radiation there at all. The author's statement, the author declares they have no known competing financial interest or personal relationships that could have appeared to influence the work they reported on. All of Japan is contaminated. The government is covering up enormous exposure. This was Arnie Gunnison, who also said reactor 4 was still intact. And so what he was doing was he had to put out a bit of sugar to trick you into believing. And he showed up in these stories from the media on the pages. He was also interviewed. And so he supported that building wasn't destroyed. There's a very slippery slope when you throw your entire country under the bus. A very slippery slope. I got stronger words. I'm not going to use it. So internal exposures had no matches. And external exposures had 46. It does, unfortunately, show us the enormous amount of influence the nuclear industry has over a country. It's I would never guess this. It could be this bad. I couldn't. 15, 20 years ago. I still couldn't accept that the industry was this evil. But particularly over the last decade, and post-Fukushima, it is what it is, isn't it? External radiation. One professor acknowledged there was 20,000 square kilometers would be evacuated if Japan followed the law on the illegal radioactive waste. There was a lot of warnings. Predict individual external exposure doses, external, of course, was validated by the academics who done the study, was validated. And then the accuracy of the indoor dose estimation was improved by considering natural radiation. Like natural radiation, we're already acclimated to it through genetic superior selection. The natural so-called radiation, which is not radiation at all, in the terms of nuclear is not, your body treats it as, it's called homeostasis. So your body regulates it the same way as a thermostat regulates the temperature in your house, or the cruise control regulates the speed of your car. Your body just regulates it. You can't get excess. Say you got 7,500 atoms of potassium-40 in your body. You can't have any more than that in your body. Your body regulates that. But man-made stuff, your body can accumulate trillions of it. And your body will attack every one of them as a foreign object with white blood cells. And of course, when you got that many, you got leukemia, right? You're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells, so you'll die shortly after, due to a lack of oxygen on top of that, right? And nutrition, because your red blood cells carry oxygen. Nutrition, your white blood cells displace red blood cells. So for every white blood cell, you're displacing a red blood cell. Accuracy of indoor dose estimation was improved by considering natural radiation. But when you conflate, when you slip in natural with man-made, it's truly the most dishonest thing you can do, right? Because they have nothing in common whatsoever. Man-made radiation is called man-made because it doesn't exist in the solar system. The sun doesn't create it. It's not stardust. It's not what our bodies are made up of. And our bodies see man-made radiation as a foreign object because it doesn't come from the solar system. It's a foreign object. So our body treats it as a foreign object and attacks it with white blood cells every second. But man-made radiation in your body pulses energy at the speed of light in an explosion in every direction. And so it's wrecking chromosomes, DNA, cells. It's putting lesions in your, permanent lesions in your organs. Your body has to repair that every second. Those explosions damage each second. It can't do that. It also has to attack the source. So the more atoms, man-made, you have in your body, because you can bioaccumulate it, unlike natural. And natural, your body doesn't attack natural radiation, if you want to call it radiation. The only reason it's called natural radiation, the natural elements like potassium, is because the industry used that to manipulate you and subvert your ability to appreciate the harm and danger of anthropogenic man-made radiation, which is the reason we have terrorist laws. And that in the 50s, doctor recognized it as a biological weapon, man-made radiation, the effects upon the body, particularly children, is catastrophic for the rest of their life because of radioactive hormones, radioactive stem cells, for instance, and then the harmful effects of your body rejecting and reacting to the so-called plague, atomic plague. Agency funding project to monitor online information about Fukushima, round-the-clock monitoring of blogs on nuclear power and their Twitter accounts, etc., etc. So imagine what kind of beating I'm after taking over the years. New York Times, TEPCO, has worked vigilantly to shut out any close scrutiny of the ravaged plant's conditions. And the plants were destroyed. There's 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools. They're gone. Not almost gone, but they're gone. Some of it's gone deep into the earth in the China syndrome. But reactor 3 ejected the fuel pools and the reactor cores, around 8-9 reactor cores total, out of the building in an explosion. The plume model to your left, the bottom is 26 days after Fukushima. So the whole planet was covered in the worst scenario. This is why I call it a pulse event. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't produce plumes like that, by the way. Based on measured environmental radiation and natural radiation. This is not what they're supposed to be looking for. Individual external exposures, abstract. TEPCO spent in one go for one community that was burning radioactive waste, which is the worst thing you can do, liberate it back into the environment because you can't destroy it, to censor Twitter, which is around $74,000 USD. Now, they only had a couple of people, like myself, who they closed my account down. But they really only had... they had a budget of $155,000 to censor Twitter for baseless rumors. Even though they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. The reactors actually blew up. We have perpetual documentation, it seems, for at least several years. Assessing individual external exposures. And it was so hard. I didn't want to believe what I was reading. I didn't want to be that disappointed. And just the whole day now I've been in a stupor, literally stunned about this story. I only finished the story a few hours ago. We done a show last night, 14 hours ago or something. So this show today is just a little extra because there's no show tomorrow, and the next show is the night after. Thursday night. Hopefully. This story got me exhausted. Individual external exposures, and you start noticing external exposures. Mystery black substance had 1 million atoms a kilogram all over minima soma per kilogram. You got to multiply it by 66.6. So 66 million atoms of cesium, which pulses energy 600 feet. And when you're talking about so much, it's everything is airborne. You're breathing it in, you're drinking it in, you're eating it. It's just horrific amount of radiation we're talking about in the country. But within 200 miles of it, these are the kind of stuff you're seeing. You can't avoid perpetually. You're definitely more worried if you got a shred of humanity. You'd be more worried about the internal doses than the external doses. The external doses are real. They're 100% real. But to exclude the internal doses, and internal doses magnifies the radiation by a factor of a trillion. Because in your body, pulsing energy every second. Your body reacts to everything with white blood cells forever. It never... So if you get a cut, your body heals in 6, 7, 8, 10 days maybe at the worst. But the cuts in your body, explosions going on in your body, the anthropogenic man-made radiation, that happens every second for the rest of your life and for another 1 million years later. So they moved people back into the nuclear wasteland, but the risk was only on external exposure. And now they got a new model that basically only includes natural radiation. It's the biggest calculated emitter in the nuclear wasteland is natural stuff. And it's pretty rare for them to mention a single isotope in the entire study. But yet that's the study that's going to, is the official study behind a new model to estimate people's dose rates in a monstrous nuclear wasteland, in an insidious nuclear wasteland. Think about this headline here. Japan considered moving the capital away from Tokyo. Japan government prepares plans to flee Tokyo August the 10th and April of 14. There's a lot of stories. We've got a lot of stories about that. Because they're not worried about external doses, they're worried about internal doses. Japanese policy states the importance of individual external exposure doses for lifting evacuation orders. So now the study is going to be It's going to quantify lifting evacuation zones based on the most traitorous. I don't even know how to describe it. It's so insidious. Individual external exposures. Professor now reveals a high level of radioactive material 1,000 kilometers from Fukushima. So you're talking 1,000 kilometers from Fukushima, you're breathing in enormous amounts of radiation. Japan no longer acknowledges this. They've done this quite a bit, but this is different, what they got done here. Because now this is going to be the official way they measure radiation is external exposures. Nuclear Regulation Authority of Japan, the NRA, which is what I put in there last night, wasn't it? On the poll last night. Yeah, I don't think I was thinking. I was thinking about the NRC, but the indoor dose, which is RF, and you'll see typically in behind that, IN, in small letters. So RF, when you see the word or the acronym RF, they're talking about indoor doses. The indoor dose / RF is particularly significant because most people spend most of their lifetimes indoors during the day, exerting a large impact on a daily individual external exposure dose. So they're mapping out your daily routine, bathroom, sleeping, in your. So a lot of places they exclude it because you're not moving around. And then the doses for the inside of your house are calculated based on natural stuff underneath your house. It's hard to imagine there's people that evil, but it's even more harder to imagine there's this many of them that evil. We're talking in the millions, unfortunately. But on this study, there's at least a dozen. France says Japan has lost control to French to leave the country because of internal doses, not external doses. Even though external doses are no joke. The model was applied to estimate farmers and office workers' farmers and office workers in the nuclear wasteland, annual individual external exposure doses around the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The government says 1,500 tons of highly radioactive sludge may end up as soil. So this was nearly 50,000 tons, 50,000 one-ton pickup trucks, 50,000 one-ton pickup trucks with a ton of sludge from the water, sediment from the water filtration. It's so radioactive they can't get rid of it. So 50,000 tons of sludge from a water treatment facility has found to be contain radioactive cesium. It's got curium, uranium, plutonium, americium, etc., too. It can't just have cesium. It's a very dishonest thing to only acknowledge cesium, by the way. They should lose their degree for that one alone. The indoor dose reduction primarily arises from the uncontaminated ground beneath the buildings. I mean, this is. I don't know what to say. Now, if I had them in front of me, I would know what to say. It wouldn't be very nice either. And the shielding provided by the building materials. So they're kind of acknowledging they're in a nuclear wasteland and they can get some relief this way. It's just stunning that someone can be this evil. That so many can be this evil. And that so many would sit in silence while this type of evil was happening. Highly radioactive sewage. This is stuff that come out of your bums. And just acknowledging only the cesium levels, because that's what a scumbag does. at 334,000 atoms per kilogram is unbelievable. That's an unbelievable number, by the way. 185 per square meter would be an evacuation zone. 334,000 in your poop. It's just, these are catastrophic numbers. These are just unimaginable numbers. And this is 2011, which this explains why there was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Which is absurdness on its own, isn't it? Because not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Natural radionuclides exist beneath the buildings. Just wow. And then building materials is a radiation source while also being shielded by the buildings. Just wow. Like, holy shit. Let's hope none of them makes cartoons. Kids don't need to see that kind of evil. Just wow. That's screaming, I'm so evil. I'm evil than anybody's in human history. That's what that statement screams. I'm a monster. That's what that statement screams. The background ambient dose equivalent derives from natural radionuclides. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Just, my brain won't let me accept that someone is this evil. That's why I was saying, calm down, Charlie, call in, because we know he's evil. No one's got to justify that. We know he's just evil. That's who Calm Down Charlie is. He's Mr. Evil. And he loves it too, apparently. So this is right close to the nuclear meltdowns. These bags are 1-ton bags of radioactive topsoil they picked up. It was a symbolic gesture. It wasn't an act of good faith. It was meant to trick you and deceive you, manipulate you, and coerce you into looking away. There's many other things they've done. So when you see them growing food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation, that's insanity. But when you see them using natural radiation as the background dose equivalent, and it was obtained by airborne surveys. So you can't measure natural radiation from an airplane flying over the country. First off, because the signal of anything low is going to be drowned out by the nuclear fallout from the nuclear meltdowns. Iodine-131 detected in Tokyo multiple locations during November 2011. 350 atoms a kilogram at the Kita garbage facility. They found plutonium in every sample. And plutonium kills all the animals in all the studies. When you see this stuff, I'm just trying to get you to appreciate there's a lot of stuff, a lot of evidence showing enormous, unprecedented, unimaginable amount of actual physical radioactive fallout. They're so airborne, this is undeniable. But it's so hard in the face of something so evil. This is truly the evilest story I've ever covered. Indoor and outdoor ambient dose equivalent rates were measured for 207 buildings across the towns of Tomoka nuclear wasteland, Okuma, which is right alongside the nuclear plant, and Fukushima is on the other side, joined to the hip of the nuclear meltdowns. These are absurd nuclear wastelands. Nami, which is 7 kilometers away, and Tetsuro village, which is a major nuclear wasteland, excluding rainy weather conditions, which brings the most disposition, of course, most radioactive fallout. Let's get rid of that one. Is the government trying to contaminate every region in Japan by burning radioactive debris? This is the Atlantic. If everyone is contaminated, then in a relative sense, no one is. So they've done many different ways to misrepresent this over the last 13 years. Almost 14 years. We're coming up to 14 years. Which is just horrifying because they're out there every day with propaganda, but there's only a couple of people like myself that are out there trying to bring some common sense to the equation. Personal dosimeters tend to register higher doses when not worn due to a lack of body shielding. These people are insane. To ensure the quality of the data, periods when dosimeters were not worn, because being evil doesn't have any limits apparently, such as during bathing or sleeping, were excluded from the analyst. So, how do you shield a body? Your body shields the dosimeter. So if there's a lot of radiation behind you, the dosimeter won't recognize that because your body's shielded, which means your body got a brutal dose. I mean, holy shit. The ultimate evil gift for New Year's. The last day of the year, they come out with probably the most evilest story of the year. This has got to be the evilest story of the last 13 years, 14 years. Well, the evilest story in history by far. There's no story in the history of mankind as evil as this particular story, that study actually is. It's the evilest. They should get like a special award, Nobel Prize, for the evilest study ever produced. They should be like in Hollywood movies. They should be celebrities for the evilest thing ever done. I've never ever thought for a second I would come across something, and I've seen evil. My goodness, with the nuclear industry, but I've never seen anything so sadistic and twisted and demented. Something that's so unconscionable. Personal dosimeters tend to register higher doses when not worn to a lack of body shielding. Your body's being pounded with radiation, and which stopped it. So to ensure the quality, they didn't add numbers. They didn't count it at all. Periods when the dosimeters were not worn, such as during bathing and sleeping, something so petty as getting a shower, was excluded. Just wow. Yeah, that's evil is real. Japan has more than a share of it. So much so that only a fool would go to Japan. You're literally stupid if you go to Japan. You've seen this stuff. The models applicably was demonstrated by estimating the annual effective doses in 2020 for farmers and office workers residing near the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, Tomoka Town, Okuma, Futaba, Nami, Katsuro, and Lydia villages. These are insidious nuclear wastelands. Post-Fukushima horror, severe impact of the oceanic environment, an unpredictable amount of damage to the Pacific. Fundamental to the reproductions of humans, Japan is simply dumping the nuclear waste into the sea. They never stop. They can't put it in tanks because you can't get back on the site. You can't filter it because you can't step over the pipes or go near the hoses. But you can never change the filter. And after about an hour, the filter's so lethal you can't go back in the building. Because of gamma shines and X-rays and neutron bombardments and beta rays. Yeah. Yeah. WTFFTW, you're welcome. Hi, everybody. This is not a long show. We're burning through it. But this is such an evil show, I can't possibly cover the whole story. I will try again, though. Quite a few times in 2025. 2025, we're going to start covering the die-offs of last year. I got a full folder there I still haven't got to from 2024. So the first week is going to be the die-off week of 2024, maybe before, you're always got to bring in examples from the previous years, post-Fukushima. The mass species die-off worldwide is because of the pulse event from Fukushima, but it's also 80 years of nuclear fallout, 80 years of emissions from fuel pools, 80 years of the stupidest industry possible. This is an attack upon every species, including the bacteria and the fungus of the planet. Get rid of the bacteria and the fungus, and you can't grow trees or plants or food, right? They've gone for broke. I mean, they built the reactors right next to tectonic plates on the fault line. We have 1,000 earthquakes a year and a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis up to 300 feet high. They knew this was going to happen at some point. And they put enough reactors in each, and they knew the prevailing winds blew it immediately across the entire Pacific and then North America and then worldwide. This wasn't an accident, like the whole scenario of where they built it and how much they put there and how they stored everything in the worst possible places at the top of the buildings. This was meant to happen at some point in the future. They knew this would happen. The annual effective, so the engineers who engineered the buildings, most of them are still alive, should be held accountable. For North America, they can use the racketeering statutes. The annual effective doses were computed by multiplying the 24-hour effective dose for each of the 245 weekdays, the 52 Saturdays, and 64 Sundays, and holidays per year, and summarizing them. Like this is the ranting of a monster. What we're to study is showing how monstrous these people really are. So the people that were doing the study were methodical monsters. And they recorded their actions. Indoor dose estimation considering natural radiation. There was no internal whatsoever mentioned in the entire study, not a single time. And I'm not sure if there was any times where they actually mentioned an isotope. But yet this is being used to bludgeon the most vulnerable of society in Japan and worldwide. Tokyo officials blast the parents who want kids to avoid ingesting radioactivity at school. It is important to share the pain. Well, eating poison is not sharing pain. How do we ever get to the point where we have this many cowards on our planet? The background ambient dose equivalent for natural radionuclides. Like, why would that be invoked in a study on anthropogenic man-made radiation? It's because it's meant to misrepresent every facet of the problem. Right? It's meant to confuse anybody that's trying to appreciate what's really going on. And it's meant to justify keeping people in a nuclear wasteland and sending them into a nuclear wasteland and causing them great harm, and then removing their conscience from the equation. Like, science clearly disavows everything they're doing. But you won't find a scientist that'll do that. When the ambient, that's because the corruption is 100% worldwide. It's 100% corruption worldwide. And that includes the media. And key government, anything in the government nuclear is going to be the same corruption. 100% corruption. That's as clear as anything now. When the ambient dose equivalent rate was low due to the natural radiation effect. It's just, I can't believe I'm saying these words. The dependency of the indoor-outdoor dose ratio on the ambient dose equivalent rate was evaluated to validate the effect of a natural radiation on the indoor-outdoor dose ratio. In other words, na, we're in charge and you're a piece of shit, get sick and die. Therefore, the effect of natural radiation should be considered when evaluating indoor ambient dose equivalents. The effects of natural radiation should be considered in a place where you picked up 30 million one-ton bags, where the radioactive fallout has covered the entire planet and oceans and fresh water. The ultimate in evil. That's what we're looking at. This model, we got so much of this stuff. This model is based on 31 days of radioactive fallout from Japan. 31 days. I don't even know where to start anymore. I just don't know where to start anymore. So this model is 1 million and 10 million atoms, but the French government, the IRSN, which is the government radiation division, institution, university in France. And so this is catastrophic for everything with replicating cells. This plume model is more than a model. This is backed up by documentation. There was, in that same plume, there would have been 1 million atoms of xenon-133. There would have been 20 million atoms, or particles, even worse than atoms. Much more energy. 20 million pulses of energy every second. All of these were downplayed, by the way. That's per liter of radioactive fallout. Per liter. Sustained for many months. The dust in Chiba, which is right alongside of Tokyo, the incinerators, is 70,000 atoms a kilogram. So the only way all this can exist is if everybody's breathing it constantly. Another study on the west coast, this is 5,500 miles away. This is a Canadian study from Ottawa. 220 million atoms. So these kind of numbers, when you're talking about rainfall, you got to remember this is true for breathing the air too. Even if it's not raining, you're still breathing absurd numbers. Every bird, every insect, everything is just, and everything. This stuff is forever. This is 150 million years. There's 10 half-lives. So when you see a word half-life, there's 10 half-lives. So it decays to a different isotope. So when it decays in 15 million years, that one, to another isotope, 50 million, and whatever the half-life of that isotope, that one will decay, and then it'll create another isotope, whatever half-life of that one, it'll decay to whatever 1,000 years, and then that one will turn to another isotope, one-tenth of it, basically, 1/5 of it, but it does it 10 times, and allegedly it's all gone. So when you start seeing the word natural radiation at this rate, when you start seeing it everywhere, and internal dose is never mentioned, and this is the study that's used to quantify and justify moving people into a nuclear wasteland. The author declares they have no known competing financial interests or personal relationships. And there should be another one there, right? Disclaimer there. And that they're telling the truth. So then you can sue them in court because clearly they're not telling the truth. Clearly these people up there are monsters. Like you see the names they're using? These are all academics. And the reason you got so many there is to overwhelm you that, you know, they're major checks and balances. Investigators. Conceptualization. A supervisor should be arrested for sedition, right? The project administration and funding acquisition should be arrested. But then you had one 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 investigators, academic investigators, so-called investigators. This is a assassin team against Japan. They're going to assassinate the entire country's health and every species. And RF is the indoor dose. RF, depending on the building type, it has different attributes. Of course, wood, steel buildings, concrete buildings. There's other ways for them to downplay the dose rates. And you're talking about actual nuclear wastelands with nothing to compare to on the rest of the planet. These set the bar for nuclear wasteland, these places. The whole story is just heartbreaking. Individual external exposures. The parameters investigated in this study were used to compute the individual external exposure doses. External. Not once are they looking at internal doses. Patterns of farmers and office workers residing near the Fukushima Daiichi. So they're right in the nuclear wasteland itself. Like the whole country is a nuclear wasteland, but anything within 100 miles, 100 miles, say, is there's not a kilogram of the soil, for instance, is not going to be horrifically radioactive. There's not a cubic meter of air that's not going to be horrifically radioactive. With physical atoms that you're breathing in, it's impossible to avoid. It's impossible to avoid it all day. Estimated exposure doses were higher for farmers than the office workers. There shouldn't be no farmers in Japan anymore. Japan should not be allowed to grow food anymore. And theoretically, well, not theoretically, but legally, if you had any rationale, you would evacuate Japan because it's so bad. The whole country. You can never get rid of what happened. And sacrificing everybody and leaving people in the worst places what's wrong with society? Discrepancy arises from the longer time farmers spend outdoors, where ambient dose equivalents are higher due to a lack of shielding. So if you're in your house, you got shielding, but that's simply not true anymore. The cesium-137 will pulse right through your house every second, even if it's cement. It won't be thick enough to stop it. The patterns for the Okuma Fukuba, which are both on each side of the nuclear plant joined onto it and are abandoned for over 13, almost 14 years, assume that all places to stay were within the difficulty return zone / nuclear wasteland. They're not difficult to return, they're the never return zones. Difficult to return zones means you're planning on moving people back, and now 14 years later we see them coming out with a study that allows everybody to live there, anywhere. No matter how radioactive, you can go build your house on the 1-ton bags, on millions of 1-ton bags, and that would be considered safe under this study. This is a study in an academic journal in Elsevier, on top of that. It's probably one of the most prestigious academic journals on the planet. Resulting in higher exposure doses than other patterns. The patterns for Okuma and Fukuba towns assumed that all places to stay were within difficulty return zones, resulting in higher exposure doses than other patterns. Nevertheless, even in the pattern of a farmer who spent considerable time outdoors within the difficulty return zone, the highest annual individual dose external exposure dose was 8.2 millisieverts a year, not an hour, but a year. So literally no exposure whatsoever. in a nuclear wasteland. In the, I mean, they didn't pick up 30 million one-ton bags of topsoil from all the farms and everything else, which was just the top 2 centimeters. So suggesting that the radiation didn't penetrate more than 2 centimeters, there's no science to support that. It's brutal doses. Because inhaling it increases radiation exposures by a factor of 1 trillion. Or drinking it, or eating it, or washing, showering in it, or cooking your food in it. Individual external exposures falling below the 20 millisieverts, a threshold required for lifting the evacuation order. So they decided they would just exclude radiation, use only natural stuff, and that way everybody can go back into the nuclear wasteland and they can be done of the concern. Grow all the food you want in the nuclear wasteland. Everything is just natural. Thus this model, so last year they wiped out, they came out and claimed that the reactors didn't melt down. This is international, all of this obviously is sanctioned by the International Atomic Energy Agency or even written by them. Thus this model social statistics, I mean these people all got academic credentials. These are all scientists. These have all went through university, incredible amount of degrees and pedigrees to get a job to destroy the health of everybody in the country. But why would you take that job? That's what hurts me the most, is people will take that job. Incredible educations. To get a job to come out and lie to everybody so that they could be harmed, their children, friends and families and loved ones could be destroyed, their health destroyed. That's not reckless, not just reckless, but it's wicked what we're talking about, isn't it? Just robbing people of their health. Thus, the model of social statistics data have clarified the differences in risk between outdoors-indoor workers and a practical safety consideration within the nuclear wasteland / difficulty return zone / nuclear wasteland. Annual individual external exposure doses. Something in it. And in the nuclear wastelands of nuclear wasteland, Kuma and Fukushima, really? It's better to beat up your loved one who's trying to go to Japan and go to jail for a while than it is to let them go there, right? Fukushima Prefecture has also conducted interviews. We should be at the airport stopping people from going to Japan. Right? We should be protesting. And when they kick you out of there, be outside the airport and catch them when they're coming in to protest it. Beg them not to go to Japan. Get big signs of Reactor 3, Reactor 4, and millions of one-ton bags. So we're begging you, please don't go to the nuclear wasteland. Fukushima Prefecture has also conducted interviews with all residents regarding their evacuation status after the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant's accident, and has estimated the individual external exposure doses. Estimated their individual external exposure doses, Fukushima Prefectural Government, 2011-2015. Hence, a realistic exposure dose assessment method is crucial for the retrospective evaluations to estimate the individual health risk. I mean, I'm stunned. I'm heartbroken too that there really is people this evil. Evil is not Evil is not... the most popular thing now is being evil. And for what? What are you going to gain? Congratulations, you're evil. But to poison everybody in your country every second of every day? That takes a special madness. Bear with me here. That's crazy. Yeah, just bear with me. You can't keep up with it, eh? Almost there. I'm looking for it. Maybe here. Yeah, we do this stuff. Boom. Like it's really hard to wrap your mind around what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure if you're not familiar with this subject. I'm just going to try to make it a bit easier here. So they picked up over 30 million one-ton bags. They're growing food right alongside of one-ton bags. They actually had, in 2019, because they've been storing it, they had 105,000 sites. 105,000 sites of one-ton bags. So if you go read this story from 2016, where they're talking about the one-ton bags deteriorate after 3 years, meaning the bags have to be repackaged. And there was 30 million of them. This is a picture of them growing food right alongside of one-ton bags of radiation. The model is effective radiation protection tool so it can predict and retrospectively assess individual external exposures. When you live in a nuclear wasteland, that's the last thing you're worried about. It's still a concern, but the biggest concern is going to be internal, because it increases the dose by a factor of 1 trillion. Your body is under siege for the rest of your life. And the author's statement, you can see the author's declaration of competing interests. They declared they refuse to acknowledge indoor doses. And Japan has the death penalty, so those people should get the death penalty for doing this study. And the journalists, the journal who allowed them to publish the study should get the death penalty too. Funded by the Nuclear Regulatory Agency in Japan, so these people should get the death penalty too. They're clearly, these are the people that are responsible for the destruction of the country now, for the death of the country, and the death of the health of the country on top of that. References were all based on other studies that only looked at, you guessed it, external radiation, external doses. Naturally occurring radionuclides. Studies, that's a study. This is the stuff to use for the references on natural occurring. How can we ever look anybody in the face again? knowing this is allowed to happen? How does Japan, how can these people call themselves humans? How does that actually work? After the Chernobyl accident, they had done the same thing. The World Health Organization, the traitors of traitors. Roles of children and their parents in reduction of radiation risk. I'm just ashamed to be a human today. External. All these studies, air dose rates, all of these studies are used to justify being evil. Well, look at all the other evil people. What's the difference if we're evil too? We make a few friends in the nuclear industry and everybody else be damned. I don't much care for the people in the nuclear industry from here on out. I disrespect them more than I've ever disrespected anybody in my life. I've been around a while, for a minute. All the studies were on external exposures to justify their evilness. They dragged all these other evil scumbags in there too. Evil is real. It's called nuclear. There's a perpetual amount of evil on this planet. And the journalists have hung us all, haven't they? They couldn't do it without the silence of the journalist. Well, I just put in the show at early day because we're not going to do one tonight. Tonight we'll have fireworks. We'll start it around supper. I don't start my show till 4 hours later. At 12 o'clock it's just going to be unbearable. So it's no good for me doing the show later. So if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Happy New Year. This is the craziest story I've ever covered. This is the craziest story I've ever covered. I've never covered anything as crazy as this. The only thing that can possibly cheer me up today is Meltdown Queen. A song's been playing in my head for days. It's one of the craziest songs ever. So we're going to end the show tonight with Meltdown Queen. One of James Lewis's song. You'll find links below in the description to his website. We're going to close the poll first. Does Japan only measuring external doses for victims in a nuclear wasteland prove Japan's not safe to visit? There were so many polls I wanted to do, and I settled on that one because I think that's the most important thing, is never to visit Japan. Never buy anything from Japan. And don't, under any circumstances, let your loved ones or someone you care about go to Japan without a fight. Fight for their life, because that's what you're doing. You're fighting for their lives. If you make it this far, because this is an unexpected show, give us a thumbs up. And we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day. And you come over to James's site, and he's got all kinds of fantastic anti-nuclear music.
Oh, sun touch. Oh yeah, she's unstoppable. Tick, tick, tick. Hearts on split, split, split. Watch her move, boy. walks in like a savior draped in radioactive silk. Promises the future, but her balance starts to tilt. Her heels strike the ground, they call it innovation, but every move she makes is pure detonation. Tick, tick, watch her light the fuse. Her lips are like ignition sparks in every word she speaks. She dances through collapse while her empire springs a leak. She's got blueprints in her pocket, cores hidden in her clutch, and every man who follows her forgets she burns too much. Snap, snap, she's the queen of chaos. Tick, 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 watch her take control. She's a meltdown queen with a heart so cold. Snap, 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 you're under her spell. She's the meltdown queen and she does it so well. Let's break it down. She keeps a coded suitcase, her secrets stitched in seams. Her nails are brushed with graphite, her plans are laced with schemes. They call her the solution, but her lies are all on tape. And when the fallout settles, there's no chance to escape. Now you're caught in her trap. Shaman Marianne. Oh, she's flawless, she's insane. Your dream girl, your nightmare, your chain reaction flame. She's untouchable, unshakable, impossible to tame. But when she melts down, boy, you'll forget her name. Tick, tick, she's the game you'll lose. Tick, 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 she's a chain reaction. Every step she takes leaves destruction. Snap, 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 her game is supreme. Meltdown queen, she's the star of your dream. You don't even know. Charm's a perfect weapon, her brilliance blinding clear. Her plans are sealed in circuits and she smiles to engineer. Every corporation crowns her of the prize, while the ocean full and cities vaporize. Tick, tick, she's the queen of disguise. Tick, 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 she's untouchable, unstoppable. She'll steal your soul, leave you unlovable. Snap, 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 what's left to say? Meltdown queen and she'll blow you away.
Have a good night. Great day tomorrow. Happy New Year to everybody. We'll see you on the other side.